non-stop for like the past year, for example, like literally.
But it's just the thing that I find with Muse, it's that they're like pretentious to the point of being overly pretentious, like deliberately kind of like, so, but not in a kind of like funny kind of thing where they're like going out of their way. And even when I was looking at the interviews with them talking about the songs,
in their personalities,
both.
Okay.
Like with the music, I think it lacks it's something that's trying to be substantial, but it's not organic. I think it's all very kind of like, well, not that there's something wrong with kind of like, stuff being well thought out, but it's just not for me. Like, I appreciate that they're good musicians.
That's what I mean. I think they're fantastic.
Singer, but for some reason, I just can't.
That's the thing. That's some people will really like that, and some people it's just not for everybody, and all the rest.
Yeah.
What I really like about them, and like it is also to their detriment, is that they do tend to experiment. Like if you like as you were saying, like in their start out ones, probably like when you're starting out, they're probably going to start mimicking a lot of their stuff. But especially after I think Origin of Symmetry, you can see each album is kind of you can't really compare each album to the last album, for better or worse, because some of their albums kind of subsequently came out really bad, and I will even admit that kind of. I remember Second Law, which is their album they released in 2012, wasn't really great, and then Drones. I just did not like Drones, but Simulation Theory, which they released in 2018, I think I really like the feel of it as well. But I think that part of that is, as you were saying, they definitely mess around with stuff and whatnot outside of like their actual music and whatnot. I haven't really looked into them too much. I don't really tend to kind of care too much about like what an artist is saying and whatnot.
Yeah, the cult of personality.
No, I don't. I don't mean like his personality. Yeah. I mean kind of like some of the interviews I saw when they're talking about the songs. I think there was an old MTV interview where they were asked about kind of like, what's this song about? And he was like, let me think about it. And he was like, and then he came out with a really pretentious answer where it was like something that you could see he was after rehearsing over and over in his head, and that they probably came up.
I suppose when you're young and you're starting out, you do want to try and put your best face forward, though. I suppose, especially for being interviewed on MTV. So maybe forgive him for that.
I don't know. It's just kind of like
he can never be forgiven.
See, it's the thing. I think they're experimental for a band that doesn't really know what experimental music is. You know what I mean? It's like experimental pop music, if you were to say it like that, where it's like someone, they think that they're trying something different or something edgy or something kind of like, but it's been done a million times before. Better. Like, I mean, you look at them when they're going on about with their prog rock stuff and trying it with synths and bits and pieces like that. It's fucking compare them to any kind of like actual prog rock, even like Green, who we had on the show there, the first episode, that they had, that they're not really experimental. They're experimental for like popular rock.
Well, yeah, they're mainstream experimental, I suppose. Well, Mark, what were the singles off their 2018 release? What were the big tracks off that one? Can you remember?
Probably the one that everyone would know would be Thought Contagion.
Yeah, that's the one. Yeah, actually, I did quite like that one. All right, yeah, I was trying to remember the big one off that. But that's the thing. All their singles. Yeah, their singles I tend to quite like, and they're quite humble. Obviously, like, I mean, because they're singles, they're quite humble. And I do, anytime I listen to them, their singles, I'm kind of like, yeah, that's pretty good. Quite enjoy that and all the rest. But like, I don't want to keep repeating myself, but their singles are great. But then a whole album, I kind of get a bit like, okay, that's enough. That's a little bit too much.
But there was a Sins in a Race I thought was kind of good when I listened to it the first few times, and then the more I listened to it, it was like, this is actually a really annoying song.
You're really down on poor Muse.
Yeah, no, I really don't like it. And like, I mean, I have tried with them, but they're just not my cup of tea. I just think they're.
At least you've tried.
Yeah,
that's true, I suppose.
That's the point of this, really. It's kind of to highlight classic stuff that might have kind of been obscured by just mist of time, and bringing it back up. And sometimes that's going to, bring up a gem, and sometimes for subjectively, it's going to bring
a turd.
Yeah, and even though you didn't enjoy it, my experience was kind of the opposite. I did quite enjoy it.
And that would have been your first.
Would you have been into them all along, Jen?
Never.
No.
Would have really, like, I would have heard one or two songs, of course, but I never would have actually listened to a full album, And I was quite impressed. The first song, again, is something where I was like, do I really want to listen to the second one? But then I was like, obviously for the sake of the podcast, I was like, yeah, I'll keep going. And I was glad that I kind of kept going, because even though I was disappointed at the start, I actually got more and more interested as I went along.
That's one thing that I actually think is something that is kind of gone now, and it's a shame. Is a lot of times bands and artists have to just release a single. They can't release an album with an overarching theme, or they can, but it doesn't do as well, because people will, like YouTube or Spotify, they just will hear their one popular song and that's all they'll want to listen to. Whereas I think sometimes there's a massive benefit to going off and listening to an album from start to finish, from first song to second song, like throughout, not shuffling it or anything. And
albums are designed to be played the way that the tracks are laid out. Like, I'm very much an album person. I
think some artists aren't doing it as much anymore.
It's a dying.
It's just a shuffle of singles.
Popular artists are people that are doing it for fame and things like that.
Yeah, because I mean, it's the iTunes generation. It's like you just buy one track and that's it. You just buy your track.
Yeah, it's like, I mean, if you go on Bandcamp and kind of like, I mean, like a lot of music that we listen to, I suppose it wouldn't be exactly popular by any stretch, but like albums are still massive. And metal bands, it's fucking like there's always albums coming out. But it is like, I know where you're coming from, Mark, but it is a thing. I've seen it with kind of like more popular bands where they have said, sure, what's the point in doing an album, wasting the money on making an album?
Yeah, at most you'll do an EP and that's it.
Some of the best albums were made on no money. Like, look at Church's first album. They recorded that in their fucking front room of a flat, you know, for no money. But the bigger bands get there kind of like, oh well, no, because I've read kind of like articles like what you're saying, people saying, oh, maybe we just release singles, and Austria people are only putting playlists. But people that are doing that aren't spending money on music. They're not the types of people that ever would have. They're the people that would have only ever listened to the fucking radio. They'd never go out and buy an album. Yeah, people that always bought albums are still buying albums.
Yeah, when I was looking into sorry.
When
I was looking into Muse, I actually looked up their album art, right? And I know that might sound like a bit of an old-fashioned thing to say, but I still like going into CD shops and stuff, even though there's far and few between. But the album art for Muse is really nice. It's very eye-catching. And it's one thing that I think it's a pity that we're kind of, in a sense, don't get me wrong, I love Spotify, I love every kind of platform in that regard, but I love going into a shop and seeing the work that was put into it, you know, and the album art itself I love.
That's why I think vinyl is after making such a comeback.
That's the thing. That's if like, I mean, if we were into a band, we will always make, like, I mean, we listen on Spotify and all the rest, but if we actually like a band, we'll always make the effort to buy the vinyl, because, and especially vinyl as well, rather than CD, because you have the proper, you have a big gatefold, and you have the proper, like, they've the pullouts, you've got the inserts, you've got like booklets that come out, you proper big fucking artwork that you can, you know, you can kind of,
it's a display piece, really.
It's nice. Yeah, exactly. It's a whole big artwork piece and all that.
That was with the Behemoths.
That was one of the most fantastic fucking releases in a long time.
Because they were doing, like, the thing is, they were like shipping them themselves and signing them themselves and doing all the things, and the band with it. And like, I mean, they're a fairly big band, like, but it still goes to show, kind of like, there's no band, you have to put the work in if you want to stay kind of with it. But we got that, like, it's signed by them, and they had like loads of little,
like, there's an actual there's a booklet came with it, and I mean, like, the artwork is it's on a par with anything that, like, I mean, it's fantastic.
Classical painter, the photographs, but
there's iconography in it and all the rest, and I mean, there's a whole big gatefold sort of like it's a triptych kind of a thing that folds out of the whole album. We had it on display for ages on a mantelpiece. It was actually that nice. Fucking, it's fantastic.
I have and you don't get that with actually up in the far end of the house.
You don't get that with Spotify. You can't put
just send them over here if you want them.
No, actually, the thing is, I haven't looked at them in years because they belonged to my mum. And it just, to be honest, at the time it was nothing that really interested me, but I'd love to have a look and see what's there. I know there's a Horselips LP.
Lovely.
I think it's a nice way to get to know someone, as like going through their fucking record collection. Because I guarantee you'd find probably, especially when you're a bit older, you see bands here going, fucking hell, are you really into those?
Yeah, like there was, I know that there's a U2 one, and I know that there's Barry Manilow, who I've never listened to. So I actually must go through them, because there's about 30 up there. So that'd be
You'd be
cool.
surprised what you'd find as well. I mean, like, the older records as well, like, I mean, there's so much effort and work, and sort of the lyrics and all the rest. People didn't just print lyrics just flat out on the inserts as well. There was artwork intertwined with it as well. And there's photos of the band, and there's there was an awful lot of effort and work and love and care went into the presentation of like.
But that's a debate for another time. Because at some stage we will talk about kind of like physical media versus digital media. But anyway, Muse. So kind of like the two ye liked it. I didn't like it.
On the fence, and you were definitely not a fan.
I'm on the fence. I like a bit of Muse, but I get a bit overwhelmed with the whole album. I like some of their stuff because I can really appreciate. I mean, it is, some of their singles are like they are soaring masterpieces at time. You kind of get lost. They are really sort of I can't think of the word for it, but they do soar a little bit, is the only way I can put it. But then after a while you just get a bit fatigued because they are a little bit too in your face and overwhelming and
by
you're
words.
like an hors d'oeuvre of Muse.
Yes, exactly.
My word for it, which I think Mark could probably hazard a guess at what it's going to be.
I think I can, but why don't you say it anyway?
No, I'd like you to say it for me.
Masterpiece.
No.
Oh, well then I'm stumped. I don't know why you were going to say that.
I don't know what it is.
See, I was hoping you'd say, because I can't remember what it is. Derivative. But no, I don't think it's derivative, but it kind of is at the same
Well, it's
point.
going to make a way into my Spotify anyway.
It'll be making its way into my
Bin.
Shit list.
Trash can.
But yeah, it's kind of like I can appreciate it.
Well, you solid your YouTube playlist with it now, so it's going to keep...
Funny enough, when we go into...
have you put it into your guest list instead?
No, it doesn't come up kind of like on the recommended kind of like thing at all. No, YouTube must know it well enough.
It's just kind of going, something's not right here.
He must have been like ill that day or something. Never mind. He was on like NyQuil or something.
But yeah, I suppose that's Muses Origin of Symmetry. Don't check it out.
Do check it out.
Check it out.
Check it out.
Check it out.
But yeah,
I'm using them. Check him out.
The Human Torch
on to the
denied
next
a
thing.
bank.
So yeah, kind of like so after all that, I suppose based on last week's episode when we were talking about Danzig and Mark and Jen, this week turned around saying how he is now their favourite artist of all time. And amazing vocalist. That puts Matt Bellamy to shame.
Yeah, not a revisionist history guy at all, is he?
No. We decided that we're going to have a little bit of a debate about who the best singer in the world is.
In the whole world.
In the whole wide world. So, Mark, who's your best singer?
I mean, this guy called Keith Merlot. He lives down the road from me.
I nominate the guy out of the Who.
He wouldn't be a wino by any chance, would he?
No. Don't be silly. He actually invented Merlot. He's an immortal who likes to sing.
But Jen seem to be more into the singer-songwriter thing, Jen. So who'd be your favourite singer?
Queen.
Singer-songwriter.
Well, I suppose Farouk Bulsara or Freddie Mercury, as he's more...
That's a good choice, actually. Yeah. It's a hard one to challenge,
Really, I
actually.
thought you were going to go with Ryan Sheridan.
No, I love Ryan Sheridan, as I'm sure all of our listeners know, but ever since... It's been about 2 years now, only. But yeah, I am really into the music and just... I loved the story of Queen, how they came about. Definitely my favourite.
Well, yeah, that's actually quite hard to fucking challenge that because I mean, like the vocal range of Freddie Mercury is absolutely fucking phenomenal. You can't really, and you don't think about it until you actually go to try and sing a Queen song in fucking Rock Band,
and you really can't.
Like, oh my god!
Yeah, and then you give yourself aids to try and see if
range
it
octave.
change.
What was it, 4 ranges?
Four
And it
octave,
was
four
because
octave
of
range.
his teeth. Well, no, they thought it was because
Shape
of his
of his
teeth.
mouth.
That's the rumour anyway, but like he definitely had a very wide octave and like...
I thought you were going to say very wide mouth.
Well, he had that too.
But I'm not going to disparage the poor fella, But apparently I remember seeing at one stage that Mariah Carey was like saying, I also have that. It's like, you barely have one. Stop lying.
Yeah, shut up, Mariah.
But they
Get back
should
in
have
your
been kind of like
box.
at one stage considered to be kind of like, say, one of the best singers in
I
the
know.
world. Mariah
They're
Carey and Whitney
dream
Houston
lover.
and all those.
Yeah.
No.
Just no.
Sorry, I'm not a
Just
fan
pronouncement.
of hers at all.
No.
Yeah, it's just I've been listening to a lot of music over the last week now. Specifically, like I kind of hadn't been listening to as much, before that for a while. But yeah, a lot of Queen has gotten onto my Spotify recently.
Oh yeah.
A hell of a lot, yeah. Mark's
So
been
Queen and Danzig.
listening to my
bad?
lovely
Dancing Queen.
singing voice over the last few days. God help him.
For myself, anyway.